It's been a little bit, but welcome back to the New Legend podcast. It's good to be back. We had to take a little break. This episode with Chris Hunt was recorded in the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming, a really special place with a really cool guy. So enjoy the episode. Thanks so much for listening. This episode is brought to us by Hagerty Insurance. I'd like to thank Hagerty for being such a great company, for all the work they do in supporting vintage 4x4 communities around the globe. I have personally about 5 rigs insured with Hagerty, and it's very simple to, such a simple process. They're very easy to work with, and I have been actually thoroughly impressed at the amount of coverage that I get, the thoroughness of that coverage, what it means, and the actual rates. Surprise, man, that they will beat any other carrier, because they know vintage 4x4s, they know the Scout world, they know the Bronco world. It's what they do, it's what they care about. So don't put your vintage 4x4 into the hands of just paper pushers who don't know and care about our car culture. So give them a shout. Get your vehicle insured with Hagerty. Welcome back to another show. Today we are definitely recording from the most beautiful scenic spot ever for the podcast, at least, the most remote. And I'm here with a special guest, Chris Hunt. So Chris, welcome. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, man, this is so cool. So just a 2-second quick intro. I think that'll give you a glimpse into Chris's personality. So they did a drivability conversion with Anything Scout, and they flew out from Denver, right, to pick it up.
Yep.
And
flew out to Ames.
Yeah, flew out to Ames. Checked out the shop. It was really fun. But then you guys were like ready to leave to drive home, and I'm like, dude, next weekend we're going to Wyoming. You guys want to come? And you're just like, yeah,
Heck
of
yeah,
course,
man.
heck yeah, let's do it. So I was like, I just love that life principle of just down to mob, just ready to go.
Yeah, all the vehicles we've had, we actually haven't had that many, but all the ones we've had, we have all of our little boxes loaded with our camping gear.
Yes.
Always ready to go. So we just came home, transferred them from what we were driving before, which was a 1995 Suzuki Sidekick.
Yeah.
Pulled them out of the back, slid them into the Scout, and we had tons of extra room, but that was okay.
That's awesome.
And then, ready
how
to
much
go.
of that, and we'll backtrack after this, but how much of your travel is pre-planned versus hey, we just feel like doing something different?
So almost none of it is pre-planned in terms of what we're going to do, but the timing is usually planned.
Right.
So Louise is a teacher, so we plan around her time off.
Yep.
Which means the entire summer there's 2.5 or 3 months there, and then during the year there's the regular breaks, winter break, spring break, long weekends, stuff like that. So we know those times we'll be able to travel, and then we usually just pick right now we're based out of Denver, Colorado, so we look for cool parts of Colorado that we haven't visited before, and we just and we go there and we look for we can explore.
How long have you guys been in Colorado?
We've been in Colorado for about 2 years now.
Yep. So that's a lot. I always have appreciated those. I have a friend named Ted, and he has a Scout, and he is probably late 70s now, and he has spent 50 years of his life exploring just the southern the California desert and in Nevada. That's it. So he's just got it dialed. When you go on a trip with him, he's like, oh, there's this hidden mine over here that I discovered back in 1967, and it's just really fun.
What a good spot too, because that's all that land you can travel to.
Yes.
Nevada's wide open.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I tend to be more just skim the surface of a lot of places because I love a lot of different landscapes and people groups and all that kind of stuff. But let's back up a little bit. So I want to talk Baja. As you guys have heard on the show, like I have a Baja mission coming up, and I'm really excited about it. And Chris has spent a fair amount of time in Baja. I want to talk moto, film photography.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about
that. Know nothing about it,
okay,
but I'm just
great.
curious more of why in a digital age where it's super easy. I guess it's the same. Like, why would you drive a carbureted Scout?
Yeah, it's very similar.
And then finally, your Scout. So tell me your story a little bit. You're a pretty prolific traveler and adventurer. Like, talk a little bit about growing up. Like, how did that part of your life kind of develop?
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I was born in Oakland on the West Coast, but we moved immediately from there and went to Guam. Both my parents were in the Navy, so. Growing up, we moved we were usually stationed for 2 or 3 years in a location, and then we would move. And most of those were like submarine bases or aircraft carrier bases, things like that. So along the West Coast a lot, we spent a lot of time.
So were they both in the military?
They were both electronics technicians.
Wow.
Yeah, and then my mom, as soon as my brother and I were born, we're apart by 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
My mom retired, and then my dad stayed in until he retired. So. So we moved to Guam. My brother was born there. Then we moved to Bremerton, Washington area. And then we moved to Japan. We lived there for 5 years.
Wow.
And then we moved back to the West Coast. And then at that point, it was time for me to move out. I'm done with school. So then I went to college in Seattle area. That's where I met Louisa, my wife, and then we traveled together down the West Coast. So we lived in the Oregon. We lived in several places in Oregon, Portland and Beaverton, which is just outside. We've lived in San Francisco 3 times, and now we live in Denver.
So did that, first, how was that? What was your young Chris's perspective on moving, like living in Japan? Like that's to most kids that grow up in America, that's not a normal.
Yeah.
Like they'll stay in a small town for their whole life or city or whatever.
It was like, well, so at the time, I didn't think it was that interesting or exciting, really, because like that's just how it is. My parents were in the Navy when I was born, right? So that's just what I was used to. It was actually a little bit annoying because, I was in Japan 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade.
Wow.
And almost all of my clothing we bought in the JCPenney catalog, and it took 2 weeks, to ship it to us. It was pretty hilarious. Or we would get stuff in the Navy Exchange. So there was, I definitely am glad I had the experience, but I think at the time I was just like, man, I just want to go like shop out at all the cool stores in the U.S. But I think, I'm not in the military, so I don't have to move anymore.
Right.
But I just kind of, Louisa has this too. She gets kind of the itch after like a year or 2 years. It's like, well, we can move somewhere else.
That's right.
Maybe we should check out, we moved to Denver and bought a condo site, sight unseen. We just like thought it would be a cool place. We made a spreadsheet of all the cities that would be interesting.
Yeah,
and
cool.
Just moved there. So,
did you have the opportunity to, like in Japan, did you get to, like, did you have a lot of like Japanese friends, or were you just mostly, or were you more isolated on base?
It was a mix of both. So base housing was limited. So we did live out in the Japanese neighborhoods, which are called chos. And so we had a very traditional Japanese house with
cool,
the tatami mats all over the place.
Yeah.
You take your shoes off. I'll never forget like our first week there, because everybody was so hospitable. It was crazy.
Okay.
I'm so used to, especially in the city, you don't really get to know your neighbors. But man, in Japan, it was crazy. Every single day, people would visit us and introduce themselves. We couldn't speak Japanese, they couldn't speak English, but it was just like a bunch of sign language and stuff.
That's awesome.
And when our bills were due, there was still a door-to-door bill collector, and he would just walk in the house and find us wherever we were. We were sitting in the living room and be like, "Hey, how's it going? I'm here to it's like, oh, hey, how's it going?"
That's weird.
Yeah, it was pretty hilarious.
That's cool. So that probably seems like it kind of continued forward into your adult life, or like just seeing new places. Have you done much international travel, or mostly?
Yeah, I've done. So Louisa's done more recreational international travel with her mom. She's gone to tons of places, Russia, Africa.
Oh wow.
I've mostly traveled for work. So I had a job where I had to go to Bangkok a lot. I traveled to, I guess Bangkok's pretty much it. and back and forth from the West Coast and East Coast. I worked for a Department of Defense contractor, so I went overseas a couple times for that. But yeah, most of my trips would be kind of like motorcycle related. So like I have a trip planned to South Africa where I'm just going to fly there. I'm going to ride with a couple people. They got a bike set up, and they know the roads there, and so going to follow them around and see some cool stuff. I've never been there. We're going to do like a little safari and stuff.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How much of your travel is, because you were talking about an outfit that you went into mainland Mexico, Good Adventure.
The Good Adventure Company.
The Good Adventure Company. Because that's something I think that's intimidating for a lot of people, is just to like go either by yourself or with a friend to an unknown place and go like, okay, we'll just figure it out, versus like a guide or with a group or different. We did a podcast with Wilderness.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they curate trips through like Arizona, California, and for a lot of people, it's a great entry into that lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, even though I've gone on like quite a few trips, I still love doing those because it's a really good way to find stuff that you wouldn't otherwise find.
Yeah.
Like the place we're camping right now. It's like we were getting gas, and a guy in town told us about this spot. There's no way we would have found ourselves up here without that guidance.
Talking to Sean on the last episode, we kind of talked about that. We had like all these plans, and planning this trip, we were like, we're going to do this today, and then like we're going to go around Shell Lake and all this stuff, and then we found out the roads are closed, and I should have like went to the Department of Transportation in Wyoming and looked at like road opening maps, but you can't think of everything. So we kind of like, I think starting on Saturday, we just like threw out our plans, and you and Luke just did such a great job talking to the locals, and man, we're in like, this is a beautiful, we're in the Bighorn Mountains.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous and really fun trail to get here too.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was so nice.
Especially for our old scouts. Your scout's a little more easy.
Yeah, I just bombed up here. But some of the
elevation and steep inclines and declines don't do well with old carbureted scouts, but fuel injected stuff is nice. So that balance. So you've kind of take us into, because you've taken some long, Louisa was just talking around the campfire last night that you've taken some 20 plus day solo trips.
Yeah. Solo.
Tell me about the mindset. What are you, because I was like, man, Chris took this solo trip, and someone in the group was just like, I would just probably go crazy. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think you're busy every day and you're fixing inner tubes and you're.
Yeah. I've done most of my longer trips have been on the motorcycle, and the motor. If people never been on a motorcycle, it's very similar to in a lot of ways to driving an older vehicle like a Scout, because you're so like, when it rains you get really wet, and when it's cold you get really cold. So when you're going over mountain passes, you feel the temperature change and things like that. So you really like experience the stuff that you're going through. So it's actually super engaging because you're constantly pulling over and changing your layers and trying to find a place to camp. So the way that I approach the trip is, like I said, it's usually time based. So for those trips, I was working for a company where we had like these. We called them summits, but they're basically, we were a remote company, and so we would have these meetups as a company, almost like an internal conference, but it was really small. We're like, less than 100 people or something. So I would plan a trip around ending up at that destination, but as far as the route, that part was unplanned. And my strategy usually involves just downloading any map that I think I'm going to need.
Yep.
And so I usually do that on a couple devices in case one of them breaks.
That's smart.
And I use several different apps. One is Gaia, which has been around a while, and it's got a bunch of layers that give you information about who owns the land, and which is important because if it's federal land, then it's free for you to camp pretty much anywhere.
And if I could just dive in, because this was one of my 2021 goals, is to become a more competent navigator. I'm just not good at like technology and that kind of stuff. And I'm not like a really disciplined planner as far as some of that research, but do you do that on your desktop? and then put it onto your devices?
Sometimes. So the app, unfortunately, the apps on the devices don't let you cache maps from the desktop.
Oh.
So you still have to go in and use your phone to select the areas that you want to cache, and then wait for it to download, which can take a while because if you're downloading several states, that can be gigabytes of data. So you still have to do it on the device. But as far as like a high level plan, so for example, at the time, one trip I took was from Seattle to San Diego, but I didn't go down the coast. I went east.
Nice.
So I went through Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Nevada, down through California, ended up in San Diego. After that, went all the way down to the tip of Baja, back up again, and then I traveled up the nice Coastal Highway 1 and 101 back up to Seattle. So for that very rough draft, I literally just drew a line with that circle of like, this would be really cool, and I would intersect at a high level. Like if you zoom out from like, Google Maps, you can see like the green things, which are national forests or whatever. And I'd be like, okay, so usually in those areas, you're going to have state forest or you're going to have BLM land. And so I would route in that general area. I would cache all that stuff, and then I would also pick up any paper maps that I can find. So the benchmark atlases are a really good one. They're the ginormous, like 11 by whatever books. And those show you like the Forest Service roads. And for a motorcycle, there's Butler maps.
Yeah.
And they have motorcycle specific maps.
That's awesome.
They're so good.
And then, so like, for example, you would take, let's say you saw a Forest Service road on a paper map.
Yeah.
Then you would look for that on, let's say, Gaia or whatever, and then create your own track or waypoint.
Yeah. So sometimes I would do that, or I would just memorize the route. Because a lot of the roads, so on a day-by-day basis, it would look something like this. It's like, I would wake up, in Seattle at home, and I would decide, okay, today I don't set a very aggressive goal. It's like probably 200 miles tops.
Yep.
And that would be on a motorcycle. That would be a really long day.
Yes.
So it'd probably be closer to like 100.
Especially on is that the trip you did on your WR?
I did one of these trips on a WR. Yeah.
On a WR 250. So like that's a small bike.
Yeah.
Not like a comfort cruiser.
Yeah, and it really limits what you can carry too. So my toolkit was about 8 pounds, and my total tent kit is about that same weight. So I'm probably carrying around 20 pounds in gear. And
would you use like a camel pack water system? Or
the water I carry it on my back, and it's a 3-liter backpack, camelback deal. And then I usually also carry a fanny pack, and that sits on my lower back, and that's what has the tools in it, because it's pretty heavy. Yeah. And it's good to have heavy stuff where you are. Basically, that's how the bike's designed.
Your tools would be in the fanny pack attached to your body?
Around my waist.
Wow, okay, that's cool.
And then attached to the bike, if I could get my tent on my fanny pack, I would do that. But usually I would put little saddlebags on there, like very little those, and because the weight, you really start feeling it when you get off road, and it's bouncing around. And then if your bike falls over, it makes it hard to pick up and stuff like that. So, so I would pick wake up in the morning, pick a spot like an hour away that looks like it might have camping. And that's based on if it's BLM land, state land. If I see a lot of like Forest Service roads, a big network out there. And then I would just kind of worry about it when I get there.
Yeah,
so
I like that.
Use the Butler maps, find fun roads, twisty highways that aren't the main highway.
Yeah, you were saying on those Butler maps, like on a Google map, when you put in a route, it takes you the shortest distance, which sometimes is very annoying.
Yeah.
But you said on the Butler maps, how they're oriented differently.
Yeah, so on a Google map, it's like prioritizing speed. So when you look at the map and when you zoom out, the more you zoom out, the more you see like the biggest roads. You'll see the big interstates that go across. And then as you zoom in, it'll slowly start revealing like smaller roads. But if you want to see like the most interesting way to get from like Seattle to Boise, Idaho, it's almost impossible to do that on Google Maps because there's just not an easy way to do it. It's even hard to build a custom route. What Butler Maps does though is it color codes all the road, I mean, not all of them, but all of the small highways,
Yep.
the large highways, even some like backcountry roads and the Forest Service roads. It color codes them based on how like enjoyable they think they are.
That's awesome.
And these are rated by actual humans. So this
Yeah.
isn't like somebody on Google Maps. I've
Right.
ran into multiple, like when they republish these maps, and you go to some of these areas, you'll run into people on like BMW 1200 GSs out there rating the roads.
Oh,
like
cool.
Re-updating them and marking them as being open and stuff like that. So the roads are rated on how twisty they are, how if you do go up in elevation, if there's nice views, if they're unpaved, that'll also be highlighted because some people are trying to seek out unpaved roads.
Yep.
So it's just really fun especially with a paper map because it's much bigger than a phone screen. You can
Yep.
visualize your whole
I
day
love
of travel on like all these cool roads.
And what were those called again? Backcountry.
Yeah. So Butler Maps makes maps for the whole country, but then they also make specific routes that they think would be fun to ride, and these are called backcountry discovery
Yeah, it
routes.
sounds so awesome.
And Butler doesn't actually design the routes, but they make the maps for them.
Right.
And these routes are free. They're available online as GPS files, and you can download them and load them up. But getting the paper maps is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
And they're designed to take you from border to border on many of the states with as little pavement as possible.
That's cool, dude. And that's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that. 'Cause I just know, myself included, there's so many people that want to take trips, and that's what this is. Like we're on a New Legend Owners Group trip, which is a loose term, but it's all about helping people just take that first step to go like, hey, we'll do this together. Because there's two perspectives. One, everyone's busy, and like we tend to in America, like the average kind of family tends to fill their life with work, school, maybe organized youth sports, like, and then you just go like, okay, now 10 years have gone by and I've always wanted to go camping, or I've always wanted to get my Scout off-road or my Subaru, whatever, or my motorcycle, but I've just never had the push to actually do it. And then you just have regrets, like, I wish I did this more. And so that's helpful to have like little gems of data from a guy like you who's done a lot of traveling. And that's where YouTube videos and podcasts, I find those tools very inspiring. Well, they're aspirational. Like when I set the, like, I want to go to Wyoming, like I started watching YouTube videos and just going like, I have no idea where to go. Like then we saw like, oh, the Bighorns look amazing. Let's go there, and let's pass through the Black Hills, and that was really fun too. So I also noticed that you're pretty efficient. I would say very efficient. Like you're typically the first one with your camp set broken down, first one with your camp set up, which probably comes from like a lot of experience. So how much has Moto, which you're very limited on gear stuff, how much has that influenced the way you travel in the Sidekick or the Scout?
It has such a big impact. I mean, we could carry so much more stuff in our Scout now, but we still choose to use a ground tent, a fairly light one. We happen to use one by a company named Hilleberg. They make
cool.
They're really popular in the mountaineering space. As far as ground tents go, they're the most convenient and fastest in my opinion because they're 4-season. The rain fly's built in. I mean, it's kind of cool.
Still breathes well in like summer weather, warmer weather.
Yeah, it's got just tons of ventilation built in. They're very fast to set up. So, yeah, some of this is probably unnecessary, but everything that goes in the truck, I really think about the weight, and it doesn't affect the truck as much as the motorcycle. But it's just kind of like I want to carry a bunch of extra stuff around that's going to bounce around in the back. Right. And usually when we get home and I go through the gear to replenish our like coffee or whatever, anything we ran out of, if we didn't use something, I'd take it out because it's like we don't need it. The only exceptions to that are we have a We have some air that we use for fixing a flat. We have a patch kit. We haven't, really needed to use that, but I'm going to keep those in there.
That's right.
Same with tools. But yeah, as far as just extra stuff, like we're down to, one pan now. We have one frying pan. Our stove, we've downsized from, we had a scuttle, which was pretty large and heavy. We've downsized that to a 1-burner stove. We've started using the 1-pound canisters from like the big propane canisters. So, yeah, a lot.
And what about like, do you have a jet boil? Like, because you have a frying pan, but that's not great for boiling water.
Yeah, we have a jet boil.
Okay.
We have the MSR version of that.
Oh, okay.
It's the exact same, similar device. Screw on the gas can, screw on the top, boils the water really quickly. Yeah, and then as far as the camp, I just don't like pending chores. So as soon as I get to camp and we find the place that we're going to camp, I like to just set up the tent, throw our air mattress thing and bags in there, and so it's ready to go. And when it gets dark, we can go to bed. And same when we wake up, I just want to pack up, get it ready to go, so that Louisa have this. We just made this expression for this trip. I don't know where it came from, but we like to say we have a tight goose. I don't know what that means, but it's a combination of about 4 sayings that we made up on the way here. But our goose is tight. We're ready to go.
Right. I like that.
Yeah,
that does come from experience, and I think and every from super novice to super experienced is on probably that curve of like doing exactly what you said, like going like, oh man, it would be nice to carry this, and so you just do, and then you find out like 3 trips later, I haven't used that thing I thought would be cool. And weight is a real thing. Like I'm feeling it on but real quick, do you have a fridge, or you carry a cooler, or?
No, I mean we had a fridge. We had the ARB fridge. We had a Tacoma before. We had the fridge in there, but we just used it so little. Like the only thing we put in there was eggs.
Okay.
And so we have a cooler bag that we have now with an ice pack.
Yeah.
And we have some like plastic egg cartons that we can load the eggs into that keep them kind of alive. I mean, we may on this trip we might have lost half our eggs. I'm not sure. I haven't looked. But it holds just the food that we need, and it lasts pretty much the whole trip. And we can toss more ice in there if we need.
So does that require you to just shop daily, or like small markets, like that kind of?
Yeah, because we got to stop for gas anyway. So usually instead of loading up for a whole trip in the beginning of the day, we don't leave with any food from our house. We don't leave with anything.
That's awesome.
And so maybe somewhere along the route, undecided when, but if we happen to be getting gas at a place that looks like they have pretty good, like we're like, oh man, there's lots of food here. Let's pick up now what we want for dinner, and then we'll grab what we need for dinner that night, and then we'll eat it, and then the next day worry about it again. And we don't eat breakfast, so lunch is usually like snacks on the road, and then dinner is like our bigger meal. And we'll even, if we're passing through town around dinner, we'll just eat dinner in town.
Yes.
And then go, and then not even worry about it when we get to camp.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
But that's good, man. And what I appreciate too is that like on this trip, we have a lot of different levels of experience and perspectives on that. Like some people really value a comfortable chair, and like I appreciate you guys aren't like judgmental about that. Like, it's just
not
fun.
At all, yeah.
But like, 'cause that's the way the community benefits, is from having experienced travelers like you guys on a trip. It's like everyone can glean insight and little tips and tricks, and kind of refine and hone their setup. One thing I like what you're talking about, because I have like 5 different adventure vehicles that I take, and also I have 4 kids, and they're adults now. Like most of them are adults. So it's kind of difficult having, if we all go as a family, then I'm going to take the Suburban, because it's like, it's just a different thing. Or if it's just Heather and I, we can take a Scout with no trailer, no nothing. Yeah, so it's just fun. That's a really fun aspect, thinking about those things and refining that stuff. Did you jump in like pretty determined and settled on the gear side, or like your first moto trip, you go like, dude, I took way too much stuff?
No, I took way too much stuff, which is totally typical. Like, it's the same with 4-wheel drive vehicles. If you're looking to get into the hobby, there's like, if you can imagine something, somebody will have it available for you to purchase.
That's
and
right.
It's the same with motorcycles. You can buy the biggest bags ever, and they will fit on your motorcycle.
Yeah.
And they will They will work.
Yeah.
But the problem is, when you have a bag that's big, you feel the pressure to fill it.
Yes.
And or at least, you're like, well, I've got this jet boil. Maybe you don't really plan on using it on your camping trip that you're taking on the motorcycle, but hey, I got the room. I might as well toss it in just in case. And you do that 3 or 4 times.
So on the bike, do you bring do you just bring like crackers or something, or do you actually bring like freeze-dried meals, or like what do you...
I eat so many nuts on the motorcycle.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Like massive amounts of almonds.
Yep.
You need to get gas quite a bit more on a motorcycle, so it's a lot of trail mix and things like that. I do bring a jet boil, and I usually have one dehydrated meal, which I don't use, but it's there just in case, like, we had to spend like an extra night somewhere to fix a bike or something like that, and I needed that like food. So that's kind of like an emergency thing.
Did you still adopt the local meals if possible, especially in a place like Baja?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Baja, you're like eating like all day. I mean, you're passing by. There's tacos, obviously, but there's tons of I don't know what it's called, but it's like it's shaved meat. It's this rotisserie.
Yeah.
It's a dark red color. I'm not sure what it's seasoned with. It's so good. It's pork.
Is it called like? Dude, there's a name for like a region that kind of comes from in Mexico that I've seen restaurants.
Yeah.
It's good, dude.
Yeah, it's so good. With there's a little bit of onion that goes on there, a little bit of cheese. Yeah.
What Let's dive into Baja a little bit.
Okay.
What do you love about Baja? What do I need to know?
Yeah, so Baja is super scary if you've never been there. Well, maybe not scary, but like it's intimidating because it's it's a different country, but
a pretty easy border crossing.
Yeah, I mean the last time I went with 4 other bikes, we didn't even stop at the border crossing. Like you just go right in. So when you come back to the U.S., there's more of a border.
Yeah.
But getting in, we just went right in. Actually, the biggest thing you got to worry about at the border is the speed bumps.
They're gnarly.
They're gnarly. Yeah, they're like these steel balls that stick out of the pavement. So it's not just like it's not like what we got in the U.S. Yeah, so you got to watch out for those. Those take out tires real fast if you're going too quick. Probably on a truck too, I would imagine. But then once you're down there, as long as you have maps or somebody that knows the area, it's a great experience. If you don't, then I mean, it's probably pretty easy to get lost or find yourself in a place where you don't have food or gas or a place that seems safe to sleep. There's just a lot of like empty space out there.
Yep.
So one resource I like to use is going on and checking out like the Baja races that happen down there. A lot of those routes are available online for free. And those roads always exist. They don't go away after the race is done. So they're really fun to ride. There's a lot of stuff established along those courses because they happen every year.
Yeah.
And people are always training for the races. So, it's fairly easy to find gasoline and places to stay. Three like destinations that people always go to. One is Mike's Sky Ranch, which is kind of right in the middle of Baja, and the only way to get there is unpaved road.
Not on the beach.
No, not on the beach.
Okay,
it's central. It's up in the mountains.
Okay,
Mike's Sky Ranch. And then once you go there, you go over to the west coast, and there's this place called Coyote Cal's, and that's another like off-roader type hotel stay thing that you can camp out front if you want. And then they also have food and a bar and things like that. And then you can just kind of work your way back and forth from coast to coast. And then if you wanted to, you can go all the way to the tip, and then you have Cabo, which is kind of a tourist destination.
Yeah.
So don't leave your bike alone there.
Really?
It's just a lot of people moving around.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And you said like something really funny, something like every day's a race day.
Yeah.
Even if you're not like in a race.
Yeah. It's like it because there's so many races down there and people are always training for the races.
Yeah.
Like the local communities, they've really embraced it, and there's people that hang out on the side of the street with gas, and they're like very supportive of you being there. And you grab a gallon of gas and like a milk jug, and dump it in through your fuel filter if you brought one.
Yep.
And keep going, and all the like little taco stands that stop, they're just covered in stickers from everybody that's been there. So you obviously bring New Legend stickers with you, and you'll stick them all over the place.
Okay.
when you go.
You think like as far as vehicle-based travel, out of the country, Baja is a good spot to start your out of country adventures.
I mean, Canada's good too, obviously.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're both very different. So,
different, yeah.
Have
you done some Canadian trips?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've been to Canada once, and I flew there. So
okay.
yeah, I have. My dad actually lives up in Anchorage.
Oh,
and so
awesome.
we're planning to drive up from Seattle to visit him. We're just waiting for the borders to get sorted out right now.
Got it. And will you take the Scout?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I could join you.
But yeah, Baja is a great. It's a lot more free than the land's very open. So
you can camp.
You can camp.
Ride on
you can
the
ride
beach.
on the beach, camp on the beach.
And they're pretty gorgeous beaches.
Yeah,
right?
they're pretty. Lots of it's pretty untouched. Yeah, but definitely don't travel alone down there.
Right.
It's very empty. So if you are on the beach and you get yourself in trouble there, like you could be there for a long time before somebody stops by. So,
Well, like this trip, man, local knowledge and having that's why I love talking to people like you and my friend Tom and Mouse, like all these guys that have kind of. You just gather so much information and at least set a good plan to go like, hey, I'm going to go with these people. I'm going to go on a bike or I'll bring a Scout with a bike on the back, which seems like a great idea.
Yeah, it does seem like a good idea. Deploy.
We'll have to do that, dude.
Yeah.
Plan a little Scout trip where we take, you don't at this point have a lightweight. You have your 2-stroke.
I have a 2-stroke, which is
that legal to drive around down there?
100%.
That's awesome.
100%.
Have you taken that on any longer trips?
No, I rode with a guy that brought a KTM 300, which is a 2-stroke, and we did like a 600-mile trip down to Baja
on a 2-stroke.
He blew his motor though, so
that's right.
So he made it maybe like halfway, and then he was just like that thing was limping along. It barely had any power.
Yeah.
The problem with the 2-strokes, Baja's really fast.
Yes.
The roads are very fast, meaning that you can go fast on them. They don't have a lot of if you're riding the race courses, they don't have a lot of big rocks and stuff. They'll have washouts, and it's actually similar to what we see here if the camera can even see it. But it's technical, but you can go fast if your suspension is good. 2-strokes don't like to be held at 50 or 60 miles an hour for a long time. It's just not good for how they work. So they like to fluctuate in speed.
But if we bring some Scouts and just a carrier off the back, we can just deploy.
Set up camp, deploy, ride around for all day long.
Let's do it, dude.
Come back again.
When's the best time of year or at least a good time that you like to go down there?
Definitely check the race schedules to make sure you're not going to be conflicting with that. Otherwise, you'll get hit by a giant trophy truck.
Excellent.
But probably the winter because it gets really warm there. November time or October.
Yep.
Or New Year's.
Do you surf at all?
I don't. I've never surfed.
Because I've heard the spring is erratic with the winds and it's cold. It's still cold and summer's super hot.
Yeah, summer is super hot. And even more than the hot, it's super dusty. So when you're riding with other people, it's kind of terrible. I mean, you get just tons of dirt in your teeth and in your eyes.
So winter's better.
Winter's much better.
Why is it is it just rain? Is there a rainy season down there?
There's some rain, but mostly it's just cooler. So everything just kind of settles a bit better. Okay. There's a little bit more condensation.
Yeah.
The ground, the dirt's a little bit wetter. Sometimes it can actually be super muddy too. So
when you go with the group, do you have comms in your helmet?
Yeah, we use a rugged radio.
Okay, they have little helmet ones.
Yeah, or like a Sena Bluetooth. Yeah, they mount right on the side of your helmet, and then there's a little mic that swoops out. It's a little bendy arm, and you position it in front of your mouth, and most of them are always on. So
exactly.
You'll hear people and stuff, so it can get a little bit annoying. But if you're using a radio, like rugged radio, if you're wearing a vest, I like to ride in a vest that has a built-in hydration pack and toolkit. Mm-hmm. A lot of the vests have MOLLE in the front.
Cool.
And so you can put a radio on your shoulder.
That seems like a better idea, especially if you're
That's the way to
in a group and you don't like someone, you're talking to yourself.
They're also just better. You have much better range, and you can put a much longer antenna on it as well.
That seems like it would make a moto trip a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Having the ability to talk to people. I know just for us, the Midland radios in this group.
Yeah.
you could tell jokes. You can just talk about, oh, like, hey, you guys see that elk over there or whatever, or that moose. So yeah, I can imagine, because I've taken a few like motorcycle trips with people, but without comms, and you just like get, which is also interesting to be in your own headspace for hours at a time with no like, I don't even have AirPods or earpods, just like whatever.
Yeah,
quiet.
it's for safety. It's pretty important too, because for some reason it's probably the cactus, but in Baja I've gotten more flat tires than anywhere, and because of that, most people actually, if they've ridden in Baja a bunch, they won't even use tubes anymore. They'll put in mousses, bib mousse in their tires.
What is that?
It's basically a foam.
Oh.
So you have foam inside your tire instead of
like
air.
A spray? You spray?
Not a spray. It's a rigid. So
it's like an inner tube.
Yeah, it's like imagine like an inflated inner tube, but made of a dense foam. And so that foam you cover in a bunch of lubricant to try to keep it cool, because the heat will build up, and heat breaks those down faster than anything. You throw those in; those can probably last a whole trip to Baja, and you'll never get a flat because you don't have air in your tires.
Have you tried them?
Yeah, yeah. That's all I use in my smaller bike.
Okay.
Yeah, even just for like recreational dual sport riding, because flat tires are the worst.
Right. It's because it's even if you're pretty skilled at it and like used to your bike, it's still a 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, and the reason why I hate them too is because then I got to carry flat stuff.
Right.
So if I have the mousses, I don't have to carry the super heavy duty tube. I don't carry any tubes. I don't have to carry the tire levers.
You put them in the front and rear.
Yep, front and rear.
Cool.
Yeah. So you can shave a ton of weight off your toolkit.
And is there any adverse effects other than they're not, at the end of the trip, you got to get them out of there?
Yeah, it depends a lot on your speed. So if you're going fast, they'll break down quicker. But yeah, I mean, once they start breaking down and they're ready to replace, it basically just feels like you have a flat tire. They'll just start getting squishier and squishier and squishier. But most of them are designed to feel like around 20 or 18 PSI when you first put them in.
Okay.
So they're great for off-road.
And probably have to imagine in Baja, like, if you didn't have those moose things and you could probably find an inner tube somewhere. Like, there's probably little... I just know, like, I've traveled a little bit in Southeast Asia, and there's like all these, like, there's so many motorcycles in like Cambodia, for example. There's always like these little kids or dudes that have like these motorcycle repair places, and they're always fixing flat tires, and they got like, they'll sell you a tube that's been patched like 15 times, you know?
Yeah, totally. Or just like a random pickup truck that comes up behind you. I mean, that happens all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
And they'll sell you a tube?
They'll sell you anything. Yeah, they'll sell you their truck. They really will. It's great. Yeah, it's like, I mean, everything's for sale.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. We were fixing a flat tire on this road, and there just happened to be like somebody's house just around the corner, and the guy walked down the road. I mean, it wasn't like we were in his driveway. We were probably like 200 feet away or something, down the road. So, but I guess he saw us. He walked down, he brought beers out. He's like,
That's awesome.
Hey, how's it going? Feel free to come up to my place and hang out if you need. I got tools and stuff. So yeah, very hospitable.
That's cool.
But that's why the radios are nice. You could just let somebody know, dude, I got a flat. I'm stuck back here. Or even worse, like I crashed, my bike's messed up. So
it's probably in a group. Especially at speed, you're getting some space in between.
Yeah, with the dust especially. Yeah, you sometimes won't even see the person in front of you.
Yes, dude. If you didn't have comms, you could be just left behind.
Yeah, and usually people wait at the turns. But, okay. You know, if you're going straight for 10 minutes, that can be a lot of distance.
Yeah, I'm super stoked about that. So Ben tells me, she's like, Chris shoots everything on film. What was that evolution? And has that been a long-term passion? Why do you do that?
Yeah, well, I picked it up when I was in Portland because it's a very Portland thing to do.
Yeah,
shoot on film.
Yeah.
But I really fell in love with it because it's the issue I have with digital. So for my job, I work on the computer. Mm-hmm. So I use a computer all day long. Yep. I'm a programmer. Okay. So I'm like in computer land forever. One of the really cool things about film is you don't need to touch a computer the entire time.
That's awesome.
And it's kind of like it makes the images last longer, at least for me, because you go out, you shoot, you have 36 exposures. I shoot 35 millimeter. So you go out, you take 36 pictures. they cost you a little bit of money. So every picture, it's kind of like a decision. It's like, okay, do I really want to take a picture?
I love that.
The great example was Ben was taking pictures of my foot on the fire the other night, and I was like, I don't think I'd ever take that picture on film. It's like it's just not worth it to me.
That's right.
But yeah. So it's like you're a little bit more considered. You come home with less photos that you have to look at, and then the process of developing it.
Yeah.
And
so you do your own developing as well.
I develop it at home.
Do you have like a dark room?
No, I use what's called a dark bag.
Okay.
So it looks like almost like a sweatshirt, and you stick your arms in through the sleeves, and it's got a really tight seal around your arms, and your film and all your tools are inside the bag, so it's dark. So you'll pop open the film canister. You can't see what you're doing, obviously. Your hands are inside of a bag. You pop open the film canister. You transfer it to a tank.
So it's all by feel.
All by feel.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so if you're just starting, you'll just take like a garbage roll of film and practice this in the light.
Got it.
But it's actually much easier than it sounds. So you'll pop open the film canister, load it onto a reel, and then seal it into a canister designed for developing film. So it allows fluid to go in and out, but not light. Then you can open up the dark bag, take out the canister, and then you go through the development process, which takes about 18 minutes. And then you hang your film to dry. That takes 2 hours, and then from there, it's you can do whatever you want. But what I like to do is digitalize it.
Okay, cool.
So I do have a digital camera that I use just for digitalizing the images. So I have a light box that's just a super light, very bright, even light, and I'll slide the film across that and take pictures of the film. And then reverse it. I use negative film, so then I'll reverse it using a special tool for doing that, and then I can share it with other people or print it or do whatever. And then the film itself, I cut up and I put in a binder, and it's fun because then I have here's a binder of all the photos I took from 2020.
Are not pictures. It's like the film,
the actual film.
Yeah.
So I have like a binder of all the photos I took for like.
Does it look like a slide? Remember those slide machines, like a slideshow?
Oh yeah.
Does it look like that when you look at those little?
Yeah, it looks. Yeah, it's so slide film is what's called positive film. So if you look at it, it looks correct. People don't look like aliens.
Right.
All the colors are right. The film I use, the film I use is negative film, so that all the colors are reversed. So if you do hold it up to the light, you'll see the picture. It just looks very strange.
Yeah.
All the colors are flipped. The reason why reverse film is cool, though, is because it gives you much more flexibility in your exposure. You don't need to. It's not as sensitive to your camera settings. You can you have a lot more leniency there. Whereas positive film, you got to be dead on.
Got it.
So, yeah, it's fun. It's more tactile,
really cool.
and it's like I got this photo in my hand, and then once it's become digital, I think. Me personally, I just like the look of how the colors look and how the film looks.
You can tell.
Yeah,
That's
it's got
cool.
kind of a graininess to it. I don't know. It's kind of it looks more like a memory, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And I like on Instagram, how do people follow you? It's like CA Hunt or
Hunt CA. It's my initials.
Hunt CA.
Yeah, HUNTCA.
But I like how you put the little scrapbook almost Colorado or
sometimes I'll take a Sharpie and I'll write where the picture was, Colorado or Louisa and Baxter.
Yeah, I like that.
Whatever.
Yeah, I like the idea of more so preserving a memory because I feel like that's, and I wonder about the servers that exist. So dude, there's people take thousands and thousands of pictures on their phones, and those are all somewhere in some cloud.
Yeah.
But it's just I'll take a picture of this dumb stainless cup. But yeah, so it makes it more special. And it's kind of as we said earlier, with driving a Scout. So the Scout I'm driving is from 1975, everything about it. The Scout you're driving is, I'd say 60% from 1975, and it's got a modern engine, which allows you to get up here and not be super sketched out and almost not make it.
Right.
So it just better gas mileage. You're not leaking oil. There's a lot of benefits. But you still, like you said, when it rains, your Scout's still it's still a little noisier.
Yep.
Not the greatest climate controls.
Still smell
yeah,
all
yeah.
the cow pies.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it is rich. I think that's an interesting theme you have going on. Shooting on film, driving a Scout.
Yeah.
All you need is like an 8-track player.
Yeah. The film camera thing too. It's like also about the experience of taking the photo. The cameras themselves are just they're so the one I have it here. If anybody's watching the video,
Yeah, let's show it to us.
It's a 35 millimeter. And this is made by a company called Leica, but it's all mechanical, so it doesn't even need a battery.
No batteries.
And there's a film winder here, and that winds the film to the next frame, and then a shutter, and then you have 2 settings. You have your aperture and your shutter speed. And it's just a very tactile, fun experience. And then once you finish your exposures, got to manually wind it.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
What year is that? Is that an old camera?
No, much like the Scout that we have now. This is kind of like a modern. It's the same camera that they've been making since the 60s as far as the body, but it's like the modern version of it. So this is fairly recent. Like this is like a 2003 or something like that. A lot of the older ones, they actually have the exact same parts. They just need to be serviced. So you'll need to, just like a car, you'll need to take it apart. You'll need to re-grease the winder. You'll need to probably replace the shutter curtain that lets the light in, things like that.
That's what a lot of people probably don't realize about when they buy a 40-year-old Leica or an old record player, that it's likely going to need to be serviced. And those places are hard, just like the Scout. It's hard to find a place that knows how to service an old thing.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit. There are some well-known people that are pretty good at it, and they have usually like a year wait list or something like that.
Which I love that about this time and place in our world. It's like there's a deep value with kind of old things and mechanical things, and I think it's because I see it as like there's this direct correlation with the increase in invasiveness of technology and everything we do and virtual things, that we just want something tangible and real. And and I see it in young people. Like my kids are like, I want a record player, and I want these old like hi-fi speakers, or I want to have an old camera, a film camera. Like Ben, our photographer, he just got a medium format, this old camera from the 70s.
Yeah, I forget what it was. It was like a Mamiya something.
Yeah, a big boy.
Yeah.
Well, my son, when he was like 13, he's 24 now. We hiked this peak in Estes Park, and he was just bound and determined to bring his medium format camera that weighs like 20 pounds up the mountain. He did it, and he set it up, and he got some great pictures.
Yeah, Luis will have some stories to tell about me holding us down on plenty of hikes with some very large,
really
incredibly stupid cameras. Yeah,
like this guy.
Not like a large format, but just like I've brought like giant like video cameras and things like that,
which is cool.
Yeah, for like a hike.
Do you shoot a video on film?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, that's a whole nother world. I mean, because you're blasting through frames, 16 or 20, and you need much more specialized equipment for that because of just the volume of film. You can't
editing, dude. It's everything. It's just crazy.
It's because with a still camera, like I could do it in a little tub in my sink, and I could scan one frame at a time. But when you're talking like some of the cameras are 16 frames a second or something. To scan that in, you definitely need like something automated.
But in Portland, is anyone doing it?
Oh, dude, yeah, people do it. Like 8mm film is definitely a thing.
That's awesome.
And yeah, people shoot movies like Sundance Films.
Yeah,
there'll be a ton of those that are shot on film.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they have a pretty cool look to it.
They do.
Yeah,
there's a richness. Even like old movies, they're just slower and it's a different pace to that, I think. And I wonder if the actual difficulty of shooting it and resource of shooting it, like you don't want to take like digitally you're like, oh, let's take 50 takes, like no problem.
Right.
When you're on film, it's like, dude, that's expensive and it's time consuming.
I mean, for large format where you have the giant 8x10 film slides, those most people actually take a bunch of pictures before they even take that camera out.
Oh.
Like they'll get their frame set up.
Got it.
And they'll take some digital pictures, or back before digital existed, they still did this with Polaroids. That's why Polaroids were a thing. They're used to kind of preview what your shot's going to look like before you bust out your expensive film that's going to cost you like $50 a shot. So you get it pretty dialed in and take it on a bunch of other cameras that are cheaper,
cool.
and then take your one $50 photo.
Polaroid too. That's another thing that made a big cut. Like my son was, this is years ago, but the Impossible Project. Where they remade the certain film or something like that.
Yeah. They came out with like cameras and films.
Yeah, I love that. So what's going on next for you and Louisa and Baxter?
So we're in Wyoming.
Alaska.
Yep, we're in Wyoming now. We're gonna go home, get cleaned up, and then we're gonna go to the West Coast. So we're gonna go to Seattle, hang out with some family there, and then the next 2 trips we have planned up to Alaska and down to Baja.
Dude, in the Scout. Man, I love it. So you definitely follow along Hunt CA, because of all of our customers, you guys are going to be putting that rig to the test. Manny, in his Green Scout, he puts it to the test because his commute is like 120 miles each way every day.
Crazy.
So he's just logging a lot of miles. But you guys, as far as scope and distance of adventure, that's gonna do it. So yeah, I'll definitely, as a shop, we're very interested and want to be invested in your project. So.
Cool. Yeah,
it's great. It's great data for us to just longevity testing and all that kind of good stuff. And your rig is super simple. It's got a basic 2.5 inch lift, 33s, 4.8 6L90. It's been doing fantastic on this trip.
Yeah. For low is a total dream.
Yeah.
On these roads, and and two-wheel drive, 85 miles an hour, no problem.
Yeah, and Ben, our photographer, again, he's like 22 or 23. He's like, I love how when we get to a dirt road that's a little more aggressive, like how everyone gets out and they're all locking their hubs. Because in like new vehicles, you just press a button or flip a switch. So I like that. It's like part of the mental preparation of like, all right, here we go, and hubs locked.
It's so fun. Yeah, but there's a little bit, at least for me, a little bit of I don't want to call it anxiety. Maybe it's like the fear of holding people back. But like every time we hit a dirt road, I just want to jump out immediately and turn on 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't really need 4-wheel drive. Right. Maybe I'll wait till it gets a little gnarlier. Yeah.
But one thing about it, like I learned this from Scott Brady, is this idea of preserving the asset. And you know this, like you're not going to go, like if you're that dude with the 2-stroke, or like that story you were telling me about the guy on the KTM who blew up 2 bikes. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be that guy. Like you want to be steady and consistent and reliable, and like beating on your truck, taking the hardest line is not a thing you do when you're trying to get to a remote place. So I often find that putting it in 4-wheel drive, it's just less stress on the rear axles and bearings. Like when you're like spinning tires, and it kind of tears up the terrain more. So yeah, I'm with you. I like. It's like it's fun too. I love switching the transfer case lever, put it in forward low, and just take the stress off the vehicle. Which is opposite, I'm sure, of like racing, or like when I was into rock crawling. You trailer your truck to the trailhead, do the most difficult trail. You pick the hardest line, and if you break it, you're only 2 miles from your truck, or maybe 10, but you're still like, it's kind of part of it, where like overlanding, adventure travel, dual sport riding, like you're trying to not break your stuff.
Right. You still want to get home at the end of the day.
Because I can imagine in Baja or somewhere like, just even like here, getting a broken vehicle out of right here would be a major pain.
It would be really hard. Yeah. Especially a Scout.
I mean, in places like Moab, I mean, there's so many like extraction companies, and you just pay a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, this is a long time ago, but I was climbing in Bishop, California, and my brother and we turned down this road to go hit some other rocks. We saw just like a little bit of snow. This is in the summer, so we're like, it's probably fine. This was maybe 5 feet off the road. we had a Chevy Tracker. We got it stuck in the snow almost immediately, and we were stuck there for like 2 hours. Again, this is right off the road. It still costs us $800 to get that thing towed. Yeah, because they sent in a snowcat to tow that thing out of there.
Wow.
So I think the cost will probably add up pretty quick.
Yeah.
And if you're out here, I mean, yeah, it's going to be much more than that.
And we had a funny snow story yesterday. Like Chris was our guinea pig, like a scout. Just like, all right, because like up here it's June, and the roads are still. They're just in the process of rapidly opening. Like one of the local ladies at a gas station told us that at this one trail that we wanted to do, like that 15 inches melted, and it's like in the 90s. It's hot.
Yeah.
That 15 inches melted yesterday. So the creeks and rivers are kind of swollen. But anyway, there's this patch of snow, and we said, Chris, just go for it. And you made it like 20 feet.
Yeah, not very far. Yeah, I think the snow was all the way up to the hood of the car.
And I was surprised how stuck you were.
Yeah, it fully leveled out, like on a little snow platform. Tires weren't even touching the ground anymore.
And we had to use, and just a quick tip, so we tried the winch first, and the winch didn't have enough pulls. It was actually pulling the winch vehicle was sliding on the soft dirt. So then we daisy chained that to another Scout, and then the winch just didn't have enough power. So we ditched that setup, and we used the kinetic rope. And the kinetic rope worked like a dream.
Yeah.
So now probably something in a bike you don't carry, but in a Scout, if you're going to do off-road stuff, it's like carrying your own jumper cables. It's one thing to like find someone to pull you out, and you're like, oh yeah, do you have a tow strap as well?
Yeah.
And they're like, come on, man.
Actually, we do carry those on bikes.
Really? A little tow strap?
Yeah, we carry tow straps. So that person I was talking about in Baja that blew up their bike, we used a tow strap to get them out.
Okay.
And because otherwise it's just as hard, because the bikes, they're lightweight, but they're still really hard to push.
Yes.
So they're 250, if you're riding one of the enduro bikes, it's 250 pounds or so. It's much easier to tow behind another bike. It's a little sketchy, but that's the best way to get out of a road for sure.
Yeah. So carry a little extraction kit. But man, thanks for sharing all your wisdom and stoke on adventure. If people want to listen, you guys also have a little podcast. So you talk about your trips and do you get into like how-tos or what you did, or what is it? Kind of what's the vibe of the podcast?
Yeah. So Louisa, Baxter, and I. Baxter's our dog. We have a little podcast we do when we get home from a trip. It's kind of it changes every episode. It's like we come home, it's kind of like a recap. We talk about stuff that happened, stuff that we learned, things like that. So if we had like a technical issue, usually we'll get into that.
Okay.
But it's mostly talking about
and what's it called again?
It's literally called The Hunts. So the website is thehunts.fm.
Can you find it on like Apple Podcasts?
Yeah, it'll be on it'll be on Spotify, whatever, all that stuff.
That's fun, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, man. We lost our GoPro.
Oh, okay.
But thanks so much, and look forward to following along on your adventures, and thanks for letting us be a part of it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.